Welcome to Cisco Live.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Booth. My name is Brian Felt and I'll be your host today. We are recording this at Cisco Live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Cisco Live, of course, being one of the most anticipated shows of the year, and this year is no different. I am super delighted to be joined by two wonderful guests today. We have Monica Livingston. Monica is head of AI Center of Excellence for Intel, and we have Mike Trojecki. He is the Senior Director of AI Practice for Worldwide Technology. To the two of you, thanks so much for taking the time out of what I'm sure is a busy schedule today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Thanks for having us.
Well, Monica, I want to start with you because you're leading the Center of Excellence of AI for Intel. And Center of Excellence is one of the things that WWT advises our clients most on when trying to get momentum behind AI. So I was just wondering if you had any practical advice on how to start up a Center of Excellence or how to sustain it.
Yeah, so lots. We can talk about this for hours, but I think if you think about the purpose of a Center of Excellence for AI is in an enterprise, you have several different business units, and they all need to leverage AI in one way or another. Now, if everybody does AI on their own without any sort of coordination, first of all, you're not leveraging your expertise broadly. You will end up with some very disconnected solutions. You're gonna pay too much for it, and you're gonna end up with just things that don't necessarily make sense. And so the purpose of an AI Center of Excellence is to be that global hub that helps the different business units build these consolidated AI platforms. And a couple of things that are kind of do's and don'ts, right? The AI Center of Excellence should not be so prescriptive that the BUs start to go around it. The AI Center of Excellence needs to have a pretty high level championship and executive support, right? Because the last thing business units want to do is listen to someone else, right? We're all human. All enterprises act the same, and so you have to have that executive sponsorship, and you have to have some very reasonable guidelines, and you have to explain why the guidelines you're putting in place make sense. So one of the main areas that an AI Center of Excellence can help in is responsible AI. How does the enterprise build responsible AI practices? How do you vet your vendors? Because you're going to build some AI, you're going to buy some AI. How do you make sure that you are within those responsible AI parameters? And so building that infrastructure within an AI Center of Excellence makes sense, but you also have to explain to the business units why you're putting specific rules in place, and they have to be reasonable. And you have to build that close partnership because ultimately you are a service organization to the business units. And so that collaboration needs to be put in place. And then of course, like any organization, any service organization, you have to provide value. And so providing training is one example, because if every business unit goes and develops their own AI training for their employees, then not only is that not cost efficient because you're building all of this content, but you also might be sending messages that are inconsistent, right? You might be making different rules, different requirements, and so building that consistency across the organization is important. And so, at the basis of an AI Center of Excellence is that overall training, is governance guidelines, and then it should also have significant expertise and be able to look at the latest and greatest AI developments. Like you can't not keep up with what's happening in the market, and you have to have enough expertise inside the Center of Excellence to be able to test the latest and greatest within the confines of an enterprise deployment. And that's just scratching the surface.
Just scratching the surface.
I could keep going.
No, I love it. I love how it's kind of helping the organization think strategically about implement and scale, but then keep it on track, right? Well, we're at Cisco Live, certainly lots of headlines, news, announcements focused on AI. That's adding to the market over the last 12, 18 months. That's been all AI all the time. Mike, maybe I'll start with you. What have you seen in terms of hype versus reality? That's one of the things that our clients talk about a lot, is just they want to focus on what they can do to get started, those quick wins to build momentum. So how do you view the hype versus reality conversation, and how would you advise an organization just to get started with AI?
Yeah, when you look at the hype piece of it, it's clearly the hottest topic in the world right now is AI. So when you think about when you're looking at AI and implementing it, the thing that differentiates hype from reality is finding the actual use case, right? I've talked to many CEOs and CIOs who said, we need to be in on AI right now. And my simple question is, why? What do you anticipate doing with it? And you need to bring that back down to a use case conversation about what's actually happening in your business to determine. And you talked about this when you were talking about the kind of the AI Center of Excellence. Having our customers start looking and building their centers of excellence as well, and getting consistency across their organization, understanding how they're going to use it, how it's going to impact their people, how it's going to impact the overall future of the company. So they've got to look at that and say, okay, what is the reality? The reality is I need to start with a use case, 2 use cases, maybe 3 at most, but don't get ahead of yourself. Don't try and bring in and say, we're going to go all AI on everything. I think we learned that lesson when people did that on cloud. And they're like, all right, we're moving everything we have to the cloud. And then they got their first bill and they were like, maybe we shouldn't have done that, right? So when we look at it now, it's the same thing. Invest, start small, understand the use cases, and that's how you're going to differentiate the actual hype from reality piece of it.
Yeah, one thing I'll add here is I appreciate the hype because it is accelerating the adoption of AI, and it's a forcing function for us to deal with, okay, we're living in an AI world. We have to figure out what our AI strategy is. And I totally agree with Mike. AI should not be used for everything, right? It's expensive, it's power hungry. It's not a solution for everything, especially generative AI, right? It makes things up. There are many applications where I don't want things made up, right? But I think there's a very, very useful function of this hype, in that it is a forcing function. It is forcing us to think about it, and there will be some investments that don't make sense, and then we'll autocorrect. I think the goal of any enterprise is to minimize those overinvestments and to really think about what makes sense from an ROI perspective. How do they monetize it? Are you using AI for your core business practice? Are you using AI for productivity? What are the metrics that you need to put in place in order to really judge whether AI applications are worthwhile, right?
Well, you mentioned ROI, and that's another thing that is maybe a little challenging or mystifying for some of our clients, which is articulating the ROI to justify the investment or to appropriately assess whether it's working. I'm curious if either of you two, and Monica, we can start with you, is there a good way to articulate what the ROI should be or could be, or is it just kind of continuous implementation?
Well, so I don't think there's a magic formula yet, because it depends on each application and each enterprise. Because if you're looking at, say we're looking at frictionless retail, right? A retail environment where you can just grab a product off the shelf, walk out, your information's on file, your credit card's been charged, super efficient, right? And I think each retailer has to do the math on what that system costs to implement versus what their savings are, and is it bringing new business? Have we solved the loss, right, of these potential systems? And so it really depends, and I think if you're looking at the most popular thing that we all talk about now is chatbots, right? And the reason why we do those is for employee productivity. We believe that employees are going to be more productive using chatbots. And generally the way we calculate that ROI, and it's not perfect, but we look at compute cost, initial implementation cost, compute cost, to both train and deploy that specific chatbot versus the employee productivity increase. And that can be measured in many different ways, like it's either hours saved or additional content created. But how much do you value an employee hour saved depends from enterprise to enterprise, and how much you value an additional piece of content. Again, well, is it 1 out of 1,000,000, and do you really need that extra one? Or are you a small business and it's 1 out of 3, and it makes a huge impact to your business? And so I think these metrics for calculating ROI have to be very use case specific. And there's some trial and error, right? You start out with a set of metrics and then you adjust. I mean, it's great to save time for employees, and I'll tell you, I do use generative AI, I use the chatbots, but I don't work any less. I am still working a lot of hours. That might have to do with the AI hype these days, but I don't work any less. And so I'm like, well, it's great that I'm more productive. I'm generating a lot more content. Hopefully people are reading it, right? So I think it's, you have to be very purposeful, and then you have to be very open to adjusting those metrics.
Yeah, Mike, anything to add on that value or ROI part?
Yeah, I think if we can get to the point where we just create digital twins of ourselves, we can probably at that point work less. But if you look at the ROI, and I agree with you completely, it's got to be use case dependent. But these businesses, companies, whether it's retail or energy or service provider business, they have metrics that they're already measuring. See what the impact is on those metrics. Did you increase margin by 2% or 3%? Were you able to increase revenue? Were you able to decrease downtime in your manufacturing facility? Start looking at those metrics. Take the metrics that you have known and have been measuring and see what the actual impact is. And our customers are going to know better than us in a lot of cases what the actual financial impact is to their business, right? So that's where I would start, is looking at it that way and looking really at the existing metrics you have and what the impact is after whatever that AI use case is that you implement. But I completely agree with you that it has to be very use case specific to measure it. Back in the days of things like IoT and when emerging technologies, people would run these pilots and there would be no follow-up. These things would just sit there in perpetuity and nobody ever knew what the value was because there was never any metrics applied to it. So I think we have a chance with AI to actually look at organizational metrics, and I think there's a direct correlation now between what AI can deliver from productivity, from uptime, from security, all of those different things. If we can look at it that way, I think customers will be a lot more successful in understanding what that value is to their business.
Yeah. Let me give you a very specific example, right? So what Intel uses in our fabs, we have an LLM that's been trained on years of fab data around our tooling and machinery and things that could go wrong and how to fix them. And this is extremely useful to our fab operators because they can diagnose problems and solve them a lot quicker. And for us, those metrics are very real because we have data on how long it takes to solve a specific problem with a specific machine. That's all data that's been saved. And we also know how much it costs us to have that machine down for an hour, for a day, for a week. That's very specific data that we have. And so when we use this new LLM, that allows us to mine this data that we've accumulated over the years much faster, and the downtime on a machine for a specific problem goes from a week to say an hour. There's a very specific calculation on the ROI for us. And then you can really say, well, this is the value of this LLM. And then you can prove that to anybody because we have that very specific metric.
Yeah, I love the way both of you put that. It's a very practical way of looking at it, and that actually gets into one of my other questions. WWT's mantra on AI is practical AI, and I love the way it pairs with Intel AI everywhere. Let's talk a little bit about that. What does AI everywhere mean, and why is it important to be practical about your AI implementations as opposed to just like trying to go for the whole thing all at once?
So for Intel, AI everywhere means that AI is becoming so ubiquitous that it needs to run on all devices, from your phone, from your PC, into the data center, and into the cloud. And that becomes practical, right? If everything needs to, if all your AI runs in the cloud, that is not efficient, that is costly, and in some use cases, you simply can't do it. I gave you the example of the Intel factories running our own LLM. Well, none of that data is in the cloud, so that can't run in the cloud. That, in fact, is a small enough model that it runs on an AI PC, because it's very specific data, and it's not going to chat to you about the weather or about music or about movies. It's just very specifically going to chat to you about the Intel machinery inside the fabs. And so when we look at AI everywhere, we really need to make sure that all of our devices run AI. Now, it certainly doesn't mean that these trillion parameter models need to run on my phone. That's not the case. But in order for us to be practical about AI and to be cost efficient, we have to get these use cases to run on general compute. So yes, they might start running on these very expensive large clusters, or they might train on these large clusters, but we have to be able to get them to run on general compute in a data center, on a Xeon Scalable processor, for example, on your AI PC, on your Intel Core Ultra, because that is much more cost effective.
Yeah, I was going to say, so love that. And when you talk about the AI everywhere piece and being practical about it, I love what you were talking about with having it on every device. You look at the real value is from edge, not just the network edge, but the edge being your device, whatever device you have, and being able to basically run that AI across edge, cloud, to the device, to the user. That's critically important. And when you look at it and we talk about it being practical, go right back to your ROI conversation that we just had, it has to be impactful. It can't be something that is pie in the sky, takes years to implement. It has to make an impact, it has to be useful now. If we can get to that point and we get these devices, and we have all these devices running AI, and you mentioned AI PC, I mean, that's it. That's bringing AI down to the user. It's not this nebulous thing that's sitting out there in a cloud. It's bringing that AI down to an individual user that they don't have to rely on some big model in the cloud or somewhere else. They can do this stuff and make it useful for them in their job now. To me, that's the key. And it can't be done unless you bring that compute power into those devices. And I think that's the big key for the practicality and the kind of tie-in with AI everywhere.
Yeah, certainly getting AI everywhere require a lot of testing and validation, and that gets into the WWT AI Proving Ground. Certainly Intel, a major part of that. Mike, just real quick to start, talk about the AI Proving Ground and the value it brings to market.
Yeah, the AI Proving Ground is something groundbreaking. We've already had our Advanced Technology Center where we've been able to prove out these technologies. A huge investment for us and a huge investment for our partners like Intel. When we're building out what we're doing in the AI Proving Ground is giving people the ability to test on these different stacks of technologies with Intel, with Cisco, obviously. In fact, in our hub, in the Cisco AI Hub right now, we're running RAG demo built on Intel, built with Cisco, and that gives our customers the ability to test these things out and run their use cases on different platforms to try to see how it's going to impact the other part of it, not just the culture and the people of their company, but how is it going to affect them technically, right? What skill sets do they have internally? How are they actually going to use this? Is it going to be disruptive into their environment, or is it going to be additive into their environment? So we give them a place to basically test these things out before they go and make that buying decision. So, and Intel's a huge part of this. One of our best partners in helping us prove out AI again from that AI everywhere, edge all the way into the cloud. So we thank you for that. You guys are great.
No, I think the investment in the AI Proving Ground is key because AI models today are kludgy. and they're not optimized because we're getting them so quickly. And there's just so, again, the hype around AI is driving us to try to implement way before it's optimized. And having a proving ground is key to building these optimizations that then tie back to ROI. Because ultimately, if you don't have ROI, no matter how cool your app is, it's not going to last. Nobody is going to pay for something that is not bringing that return. And labs like the Proving Ground are key in making sure that the way we're advising our customers is for the best performance for their app and the best balance, right? We'll have customers that say, hey, I need to do this cheaper. I'm okay with 10% less performance, right? You really have to play with those levers to understand what performance you need versus how much compute you need, and what your return is on that. And the Proving Ground is the only way to do that today. There's just no other sort of magic formula that's been created that can do that. And so you have to test it out.
And it's a huge competitive advantage for us, right? So when we look at this, our competitors are not making these types of investments, and it's a huge competitive advantage.
So we're at Cisco Live. Let's talk about whether it's in conversations you're having in the hallways or announcements related to the keynote, or anything for that matter. What has got you excited about when you leave? You'll be thinking about or looking more into, and it could be on AI, it could be cloud, it could be any technology domain.
So for me, what's really exciting right now is that we are starting to talk about sustainability, and we are starting to talk about impact of AI, because there's a period of time when new technology comes out where everybody's going very quickly and like, I must have it, I must build it, I must use it. And when we get to the point of, okay, but how do we do this efficiently? How do we do this practically, as WWT would say? That's really exciting to me. And then also sustainably, right? We need to be good stewards of this planet. I love using AI for good. Those are my favorite examples. And so the way that we're starting to really look at AI much more practically is what's getting me excited. And really just how we're leveraging the hype in AI to build something a lot more sustainable.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things that I've heard and talked to a lot of people about this week is just the infrastructure readiness for AI and kind of giving our customers a place to start. And that, to me, we talked about the RAG demo that we built, and I will tell you, looking at where Cisco is going and what Intel is doing to partner with Cisco, is that infrastructure piece is going to be critical. It's going back to ROI again, right? Making sure that you're getting what you want out of this. And the infrastructure piece has been incredible. So many conversations about Ethernet versus InfiniBand and the things that are happening there and how we build this infrastructure out. That's the part I've been extremely excited about. I'm just so happy to hear Cisco talking about these types of things and really showing their value in this kind of AI ecosystem. Because I will tell you, none of us can do this on our own, right? This is going to be a true kind of ecosystem play for all of us.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because in order for AI to be practical, in order for AI to be cost efficient, the ecosystem has to play. It can't be, very closed. It can't be a single thing, because then that's going to be very expensive. So it has to be open. It has to be an ecosystem play, and we have to have choice.
Absolutely.
Well, certainly so much opportunity, lots of excitement around the industry, lots of excitement around the Intel and WWT partnership. Thank you to the two of you for joining me. I know you guys have had a jam-packed schedule this week, so I very much appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Monica.
Thank you to everybody out there watching. Much appreciated. If you want any more information on WWT or Intel or the WWT and Intel partnership, you can head over to WWT.com. We have loads of information you can watch, you can read, you can learn about that ROI and those use cases that we mentioned, and you can go over there and check it out. And until then, we'll see you next time.